Hey, it's me again, and I'm back for another reading from a book that I once wrote back in the 1990s. Where is the Hope? And I find it very ironic that today is election day in the United States, and the title of chapter 2 of my book was, or still is, I guess, The King of the Jungle. And the subtitle is The God Who is in Control. So I find it a little ironic, maybe, that this reading just lines up with where we are in our world. Because it sometimes does really seem like a jungle, doesn't it? So here we go. Let's dive in. By the way, if you're just joining this for the first time, I wrote a book in the 1990s, carried it around for more than a decade, encouraged by my dad at Thanksgiving in 2008 to publish it. I self published it for fun and made it available for free as a PDF if anybody ever wanted it. Like I said, I probably have the only physical copy of it in the world. But hey, I just thought last week, why not share it with the world again in this new medium called Facebook Live and push it out to my other social media platforms as well. So, having said all of that, here we go. Let's read a little bit from chapter 2, The King of the Jungle. It doesn't take the brightest person in the world to realize that for many people, their world is constantly being turned upside down. Everything seems to be out of whack. Lives are shattered by different kinds of troubles and tragedies. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to determine that this old world of ours is a jungle. In fact, it has been for a long, long time. It went from a garden to a jungle. It went from a place of peace to pieces. It went from a place of tranquility to a place of troubles. Time out. Those sentences were actually pretty good. It went from a garden to a jungle, from a place of peace to pieces. It went from a place of tranquility to a place of troubles. I'm still proud of those words. Okay, back to the reading. Sometimes people wonder, why didn't God create a perfect world? Well, actually, He did. Before Adam and Eve disobeyed God's command not to eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, things were perfect. Then they were banished from the garden to live and work in the jungle. Life in the jungle is tough. Life in the jungle can be cruel. Just take a look around the jungle in which you live. All you have to do is pick up a newspaper or watch the news or stick your head out your window and listen to the cries and hurts of those around you. Time out. Of course, today all you have to do is get on the internet, get on Facebook, check your social media platforms, get on Twitter if you dare. Okay, back to the reading. It doesn't take much for your life to turn from living in a nice, peaceful garden to being thrown into a dark jungle. Maybe it's a late night phone call. Perhaps it's the shattering silence that follows the words, I'm sorry, but there was nothing else we could do. Whatever the case, you know what it's like to live in the jungle. If you've ever felt like you were in a world that is going out of control, then hopefully you can find some comfort from a story I was reminded of just recently. It's a story that reminded me that although we live in a jungle, things don't have to be out of control because there is a king of the jungle. By the way, time out. The title of this chapter obviously came from a Stephen Curtis Chapman song that I was listening to back in the 90s. And if you're not familiar with who he is, his album Heaven in the Real World was phenomenal and still is. I encourage you to get it. But he has a song in there called The King of the Jungle. I'm actually going to share a quote from it as we end the chapter in just a moment. But thought you needed to know where that title came from. Back to the chapter. There was a certain man who lived on a marvelous ranch. He had the nicest house in the entire countryside. He had more cattle than anyone else. He had a nicer office than the rest of the guys. He could get a tea time at the nicest country clubs by the mere mention of his name. He had more money than anyone in the world. He also had more employees under his control than all of the businessmen in his country. He was known as the greatest man among all the people of his time. Simply put, he had the nicest garden. But one day his garden came crashing down as he was thrown into a tumultuous jungle. He lost almost everything he had. His empire was taken away from him. All of his animals were destroyed. His children were killed in a violent storm. He lost his place of prominence. He even lost his health. But he didn't lose his faith in the king of the jungle. Everyone had a response to his calamity. It began with his wife. She tried to get him to just give up and die. His friends tried to convince him that it was his fault, that he was thrown into the jungle because of something he did, that life was out of control and there really wasn't anything he or anyone else could do about it. After their attempts to explain and comfort, he spoke up to affirm to them that there is a king of the jungle. Listen to what Job told his friends. This is from Job 19:25. I know that my Redeemer lives, and that in the end he will stand upon the earth. Stephen Curtis Chapman, from that album, Heaven in the Real World, echoes the same thought in the song King of the Jungle. As he writes, what I need to remember is one thing, that the Lord of the gentle breeze is the Lord of the rough and tumble, and he is the King of the jungle. People say this world's a jungle, and sometimes I must admit, I'd be scared to death if I didn't know who was king of it. But the truth is, God created this whole world with his own hand, so everything is under his command. We would be wise to remember that although we live in a jungle, and although things seem to be out of control, there is a king of the jungle. So like Job, take comfort in the fact that God is the God of the gentle breeze, as well as the rough and tumble. And no matter what happens in this crazy world of ours, in the end, the king of the jungle will still be standing. So there you have it, folks. A little reading from chapter 2 of Where is the Hope? And I hope this morning as we close out that you realize in the craziness of this world, which is a jungle, and folks, today may get crazier than normal, but don't lose heart and don't ever forget that we follow the real king of the jungle. Hope you guys have a great day.